Hey guys, I am Dr. Kim Sage. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This channel is all about mental health and attachment and relationships and trauma and complex trauma, and hopefully tools and information that will help you truly live and heal your story. I really am so passionate about attachment and trauma, and I was posting recently a bunch of things on TikTok. If you want to follow me on TikTok, I would encourage you to do so. I really post at least once a day or more. It gives me a chance to interact a little bit more with people, and I'm hoping that you will find answers to a lot of questions there that I can't always address in this longer format. I love the longer format, and I won't stop doing the YouTube videos, at least for now. And I'm also working on creating course content on healing attachment and relationships, on childhood trauma and attachment, and also on recovering from and really dealing with having really wounding parents, whether they are borderline or narcissistic, and those types of things. So I truly am finally, I'm making it happen. And so I hope to be sharing those in the next few months. But I really wanted to talk about this topic today, about the relationship between attachment and trauma from an attachment perspective lens, based on a lot of the research I'm doing and kind of rereading a lot of materials to begin to build my courses, because I truly do want them to be, filled with things that you may or may not know about. And so I want to create information that really helps us understand it, and then you can take it and internalize it yourself and apply the exercises and videos and things like that to heal your life. Now, remember that attachment theory is based on the idea that the quality and type of caregiving we have with our primary caregivers, it is often mothers, and the research has been done on mothers, so it can be anyone, whether you are non-binary, mother, father, whatever it is, that primary role in terms of who is the child interacting with really does set the stage for attachment throughout our lives. Now we can have, and we do need other attachment relationships with the other parent, with siblings, with teachers, co-workers. All of that has an impact. But when I talk about attachment in this way, I'm really talking about those early years, right? The beginning of our introduction to the world. Obviously things too, like having a parent sadly maybe be lost to an illness or something, that could affect attachment later. So it is complicated, but the main idea is we have this general style, and then we have other attachment experiences, and we can lean into other styles based on the relationships with those in our lives. But for this discussion today, we're focusing on primary caregivers. People often say, well, why are you just talking about moms? But I'm really just talking about the research that was done primarily with babies and mothers. So that is why. Please know that I don't have a bias. It's just that, across the world, women are still traditionally the primary caregivers. But even more than that, the research that's often been done has been done with moms, okay? So don't forget too that attachment has 4 main styles: secure, insecure anxious, insecure avoidant, and disorganized. Now you might also hear other words like dismissive, preoccupied, fearful avoidant, but I'm going to just stick with my basics, which I don't really love these words, but at least it's the way my brain just has them down. So thinking about secure, 2 types of insecure around anxious and avoidant, and then another type of insecure, which is called disorganized. Now you can check out more videos I have here on YouTube for each one of those styles. I don't think I have a secure attachment video, but I'm guessing if you have secure attachment, you're probably less inclined to be watching a video. So anyway, but I do have lots of videos on that issue. And then I'm going to talk about trauma. Remember that we have a sort of single trauma, PTSD, series of traumas like war versus complex trauma, which is often interpersonal trauma. Now, I'm going to talk about trauma too. We can get down to the nitty-gritty in terms of those differences, but today's video is really about complex trauma, that repeated interpersonal trauma, often at the hands of caregivers or those who, you should have been safe with, and how that connects to attachment. And so part of the research that was done was looking at the abuse of children in orphanages by Catholic priests. And what had happened was there were a series of priests and administrative people who had been identified as abusive, as sexually, physically, and sadistically abusive towards children. And what they did was the church moved these people, these men, into one orphanage. So they basically said, oh, these people are at risk. Let's put them all together, okay? So you can imagine what happened. What happened was a horrific amount of abuse towards a specific population of children at a specific time. Fast forward years and years later, through many different processes, some in therapy and otherwise, it was discovered that there was a large group of people who were abused in these orphanages by these people. And so we had this very unique sample study of people who were, molested, physically abused, oftentimes sadistic abuse. And over time, we were able to compare this study group, this sample, to other groups. And the short version of all of this is that when the research was done with many different, issues tested in terms of psychiatric illness, borderline, depression, anxiety, how did all of their mental health play out? And what were the commonalities for the kids who were in the orphanage that had, these attachment styles versus those attachment styles. And then they were also compared to other children who were abused, but not in the same, study. And what they found was this, that what made a difference in terms of trauma and long-term impact was their attachment style going into the orphanage. So here's the deal. For many of the children, a significant amount, they had already been in, difficult, abusive situations prior to going into the orphanage, right? So they had already experienced trauma. They may never have had any real secure attachment. Versus another group of kids who had been, let's say, in large Catholic, because it was a Catholic church, Catholic families where there were multiple children. And let's say something happened to the fathers, and over time, there were so many children that the mother could not financially provide for them, and so those children were placed in the care of the orphanage. So what the research found was that a significant proportion of those children who were in the orphanage, who had, let's say, theoretically healthier family systems, they were part of that large Catholic family, but ended up just unfortunately being, removed. They tended to fare better over the course of their lifetime because they had some secure attachment, as opposed to those children who did not, who already entered the orphanage having insecure attachment. Now, the ones that were most especially impacted in terms of these relationships were those kids who had disorganized attachment, right? Disorganized often has that combination of avoidant and fearful and anxious. There is no real organization, although some argue there is an organization to the chaos. But the bottom line is that they never had secure and safe caregivers. They were left to fend for themselves. The source of safety, meaning the mother, was often the source of fear. And so that created disorganized attachment. So, in terms of understanding complex trauma, what this study and those like it have found, I'm going to read it to you because I think it's really fascinating. It says, we see significant research indicating that there are two lineages of long-term effects of trauma: simple and complex PTSD. Simple PTSD is typically associated with single or cumulative traumatic events per se, relatively uncomplicated by other factors, whereas complex trauma is the outcome of a combination of early childhood insecure attachment aggravated by abuse or trauma in later childhood or adulthood. So what they're saying is that it's not just what happens to you in early childhood. It is what is creating the complex trauma is your attachment style in early childhood combined with later childhood and or adulthood abuse. That is the sort of the groundwork of what creates complex trauma. So that kind of goes against what we often think of it. Oh, it's just early childhood trauma. They are all connected from the lens of attachment. And that what really makes a difference in how it plays out is your attachment experience in early childhood that is then impacted by what happens later. So for example, like I said, in the study at the orphanage with the Catholic priests, the kids who had some secure attachment were better able to navigate the abuse and trauma they experienced, I should just say abuse, the abuse they experienced because they had a different sort of functioning system in terms of their attachment. They fared better over time. They had less, diagnoses of complex trauma than those who really had nothing to begin with and were then abused and ongoingly abused at the orphanage. And then the research goes on to talk about things like dissociative disorders, borderline, PDs, how all of these are really manifestations of insecure attachment combined with the trauma that then sets up this functioning. If you think about the swirling nature of childhood, attachment, genetics, how all of that can combine together, it really does explain why we can see these manifestations that are really just attempts to survive these really wounding attachment experiences. And so if complex trauma is really about insecure attachment gone wrong, then we cannot just focus on trauma processing. We need to focus on healing the attachment wounds, and that there's a whole protocol which I'm going to be referring to when I make my courses that talks about this protocol. This video is probably longer than I anticipated, but I hope it was helpful. I will be posting more on this topic. Please don't forget to follow me on TikTok. Like I said, if you want to post more questions and answers, and I will be doing daily check-ins. A lot of the things that are kind of coming up there are about our childhood and wounding and parenting. And so I've been kind of focusing my content there more and more. So don't forget to check that out. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe and well, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to post your questions. And thanks for watching. Bye guys.